We are in the middle of the festive season. Me and Anurag have spoken on the multiple occasions how the festive season is perhaps going to be that pivoting, that inflection point, which will result in the economy perhaps coming back to normal. But has it come back to normal? Well, some of the stakeholders join us on this platform and they are going to tell us what they think is going on with the economy and how their businesses are being affected as a result of what's going on in the economy. And let's introduce them without further ado. Mr. Bharat Goyal, founder, director of Bhartiyam International School, joins us on the platform. Mr. Atul Gupta, founder and CEO. Co-Find is also with us on the platform. Dr. Sunita Gandhi, founder of Getty and GCPL, is also joining us. Mr. Sabarna Roy, senior vice president at Electrosteel Group and the literary author of 6 critically acclaimed best-selling books, is also joining us. And last but not the least, my co-anchor, Dr. Anurag Batra, chairman and editor-in-chief, Businessworld and Exchange for Media Group, also joins us today. In fact, my first question, my first customary question is usually to a panelist, but today I'm going to ask Anurag a question. Anurag, you have been very excited about the festive season. In fact, you have asked a number of panelists that is the festive season going to be a part of that catalyst movement, which is going to revive the economy. We are in the middle of that cusp right now. Where do you think we stand? And then you can start the round of asking questions to our panelists.
Thank you, Vineet. First of all, let me say that till a week back, the festive season was on its peak, as you've seen from various categories. And let me give you a very specific example. The numbers were back to peak levels and in some cases surpassed peak levels of past years because of 3 reasons. One, there was a pent-up buying. People hadn't gone out and shopped. People also had savings. And third is it's the Diwali and the wedding season. Between these 3, let me give you 2 very important examples. Let's take a category like, microwaves, just to, share with our viewers. Microwave as a category is about 200, 250 crores. As a category, it's not a very big category. This year, it has already crossed 800 crores in sales. As a category, right? A simple category like microwave. Auto sales, you see in October has been a high month for almost all 4-wheelers and 2-wheeler manufacturers. In fact, some of the 4-wheeler manufacturers have crossed their October numbers of 2-3 years back. And they're downplaying it because they want concessions from the government. Otherwise, the auto players have done very, very well. Of course, even an auto player like Maruti saw in April, which was 0 vehicle sales. So they're made up for it. Now, the billion-dollar question or trillion-dollar question is, will this sustain beyond Diwali? I have 2 responses to offer. One, in the last 1 week, COVID cases have risen. Hence, there is again a fear factor of going out.
Absolutely.
Just to give you Lemon Tree's numbers, I want to give you numbers of the hospitality chain Lemon Tree. Its occupancies were back to peak levels. It saw a recovery of about 27, 28%. So hospitality was also moving in the right direction. But my hunch is it may not continue beyond the festive season. It may peter off, it may come down, and it may take a stimulus from the government to be able to drive that up. So October has been very good. November's first 11 days have been very good. But with the number of COVID cases rising and the initial euphoria of participating in a festive season over, I think post-Diwali, it will be an acid test whether the festivities and demand will continue. And your guess is as good as mine because we now know that we don't know the future. Astrologers said 24th May, COVID will go away. Then they said it will go away post 24th September. We don't know. And the strain of COVID is such that it kind of, reinvigorates itself and comes back. And so I don't know the future. Also, vaccine seems to be around the corner, but distribution is an issue. Pricing of the vaccine is an issue. So I think we need to live with COVID for a long time. That's what it looks like right now. And we will need to adopt, the social distancing, masks and hygiene as a part of how we live and minimize on our, gatherings and going out. I don't think that's coming back in a hurry.
Anurag, the other day, in fact, most of the newspapers rather were replete of images of shoppers thronging and flocking to markets such as Sarojini Nagar and Chandni Chowk and Sadar Bazaar. Bharat, your assessment of what's going on right now, like Anurag very rightly pointed out, that this is an unpredictable virus. There are some people who, in fact, receive the virulent end of this virus, whereas there are others who get this virus and don't even get to know that they've had the infection. It just passes them by. Their immune system fights it off. That makes the situation even more precarious because this unpredictability about this disease is also going to affect the economy, the markets, the consumer, the retailer. Everything right from mobile phones. In fact, mobile phones is perhaps the only thing I can think of right now which have made more sales during this pandemic period because people have nothing better to do than to look at screens.
And also, before Bharat responds, also the screens have become a way to their world, whether it's students who are logging on to attend their schools and colleges, whether it's working professionals like you and me who work from home. So today having a screen, whether it's a laptop, it's an iPad or a phone, has become a work accessory. It is also consumption of content. So technology and devices and accessories that are around technology, those categories have grown. But I'm not sure that overall the demand will continue beyond November. But I don't want to make a prediction, but I think it will be sluggish. It will slow down post that. There is a Diwali euphoria right now. There is wedding over the next few weeks. So it will continue for a little while. But I think it will take a very big stimulus from the government to be able to shore up the economy.
Okay, right, absolutely. Anurag, stimulus is something which we have debated upon previously as well, Bharat. Your response to my question in consolidation with Anurag also, what Anurag also said.
Yeah. So my understanding, I'll give you a perspective which is from the education space and also a tier 3-4 city. So I reside there. So the situation here is very similar to flocking of markets during this entire festive season. But my understanding goes that somewhere down the line, the government is probably not focusing on providing positive message across the industry more than a stimulus. The people are afraid today, like we're discussing about rise in COVID cases, like what's happening in Delhi and also what's happening in our cities here. But the positivity around the market is absent completely. And that is what is very, very important. Earlier, people used to buy what they wanted, not what they needed. And I think now they've started buying what they need and not what they want. So there is a very clear shift between the buying patterns of all the consumers. We have some footprint in retail as well, and we are seeing that. And there's also, like in our Indian markets, a lot depends on the charts. So wedding season, for that matter, it's already consolidated too much in November, December, and there's nothing in January that's coming around. So all that will make it very, very difficult for spending to increase. And I feel that government's focus on handling COVID has to change with a lot of positive messages. That's something which is absent from media space, otherwise as well. That we are all.
I have a contrarian view. I'm interrupting Bharat, but right now there is no positivity. I mean, just because there is sales in the market, I think lives are more important. I think we need to emphasize the point harder that there is a situation and we need to deal with it. So I think positivity should be a reflection of reality and not ignoring the reality. So I have a little contrarian view that yes, the last 40 days have been very good for the economy in lots of product categories. There's no question. There is data to support it. It's black and white. I don't think there is an argument against that. But I think we need to be cautiously optimistic about the future. We need to be resilient. But the only way we can do is to understand the situation on ground and understand that the COVID is growing and we need to be a little afraid. We need to be a little cautious. I think, just messaging doesn't help. Actual action on the ground help. So I have a little, we have to live with COVID for a while. So in the sense, acceptance, but following the norms and being a little afraid is good. I see it as a positive thing. And, I know we are on an English news channel, but even in our religious scriptures, like, the Hanuman Chalisa and Sundarkand. It's written that Bhin Bhai Ho Na Preet, which essentially means you have to have a little fear to kind of, have love. But let me extrapolate and say to enjoy life. If you're not fearful, you'll do the wrong things. And so clearly a little bit of fear. I think the government is doing the right thing by not being very exuberant. I think balance is the key. That's my personal viewpoint. And, I'm a very outgoing person who spends 20 days in planes and in hotels, but I am not traveling. And I'm okay with it, because at the end of the day, I have not opened my office. It's optional for people to come to office. A couple of them show up, because I think lives are more important than livelihood. Livelihoods are very important. And sometimes, lack of livelihoods can also impact lives. And that's why Businessworld and NewsX do this share. But in my view, we cannot have exuberance, at least for the next few weeks. We have to be extremely cautious and sensitive. Let me bring in Ms. Gandhi. Ms. Gandhi, you heard Bharat, and he comes from the education space. Uh, what is your view on what is happening on the ground in terms of economy? Where do you see it headed? And what do you think will happen post-November in terms of demand?
Thank you, Anuragji. I think that the economy is obviously seeing a boost lately, and maybe because of the factors you mentioned so beautifully. But I think that education sector from which I come, it's a plethora of problems. Firstly, the government sector is not affected. Teachers are being paid. Private sector schools, budget private schools in particular, are suffering enormously. They're not celebrating this year like they did the previous years. They're not buying anything. Forget what Bansalji said, okay, they're buying in limited doses, but actually they're not buying. And 11 lakh teachers in Rajasthan alone are on the streets right now. They've closed their online teaching. Things are not looking pretty at all. So I'm not as optimistic. There are many.
You're saying rather than creating a digital kind of equilibrium, it's created a digital divide, and it's created issues for the ecosystem of education, which is in the states and in the government ecosystem.
Right. So there's education on the one side that obviously is suffering. And the latest any kind of data we have is from the ASA report that came out last month. And it says that only 30% of the children across the country have access to any kind of learning. And that may be, doses of very, very small measure for some of them. I think there's a real problem at hand in terms of learning. But when we talk about the economic impact on education sector, let's not forget, this is the only sector that is closed. While if you look at other countries, including the second wave of all the closing of the different sectors in UK and so much across Europe and many parts of the world, they have not closed their schools because they've considered it very, very important. Also, perhaps because children are less likely to carry the virus. So why are we closed? Why in India the schools are closed? Of course, in some states, maybe because of the NEET examinations having gone pretty well, given the Supreme Court order they took place. Why not a decisive action with respect to schools? Because I'm sure when that decisive action comes in place, the parents will be bolder. They will feel the support of the government. There's been a lot of iffiness about opening of schools.
It's a devil's choice. There is a devil on one side and there's the deep blue sea. If you open up and something happens, God forbidding, then, there is a risk of being painted, of being irresponsible, right? And if you don't open it, clearly the kind of problems that are a reality and you're articulating them become even bigger if these schools continue to stay closed. So I think it's a very difficult choice. I don't know what the way forward is. But clearly, I understand the reasons why schools are shut. Do you have solutions, Ms. Gandhi?
Yes, certainly, of course. I mean, if you look at what's happening in Tamil Nadu, last month they declared a scheme whereby they're paying a direct benefit transfer of 1,250 rupees per child per month. And that is the equivalent of some 15,000 rupees. So why not direct government resources to really go save the education sector? So, for example, one device per child and greater access to Wi-Fi, and that will help all segments, not just education segment. Then the issue of PPP, right now is a fantastic time to look at private-public partnerships. Schools are very willing to pitch in and take over the schools that are not working so well. And the budget private schools that are suffering, government could give very much an economic package to them. They are left out once more, not just because they are closed and they're not getting any kind of money from the parents. They're not getting any kind of MSME handouts, any kind of concessions. They have to pay their taxes, they have to pay their bills, they have to pay their interest on the loans. They are suffering from every single angle. Obviously, they need economic package, but the reason they cannot get any kind of economic stimulus from any kind of packages that are being given to the economy, they're not getting the benefit because they're not for profit. They're not enterprises. They're seen as non-profit, and therefore they fall into the cracks once more. So we have a huge problem, and the solutions lie with the government taking a more proactive stance. There should not be that discussion about government schools, private schools. Well, these are schools, and they're providing a huge benefit to the government, to the country. The taxpayers paying taxes towards education. They're not putting their children in government schools. They're paying in addition to the private schools. So altogether, they are, supporting a structure that the government would have had to pay for. So they're bailing the government out. Now, when the schools need support and the parents need support, there is just none. So,
okay, Ms. Gandhi, I think that's a real problem. And again, we are talking of the real Bharat, the real India, where so many numbers are being impacted negatively.
Yeah, I have a question for Ms. Gandhi. Ms. Gandhi, you said that only 30% of the people have access to some sort of a digital platform for education, but the digital platform in itself is a questionable platform in terms of its efficacy of imparting education to the child. Isn't that another problem that has perhaps not surfaced yet?
Well, I think blended learning is something we need to live with. There are many advantages to online learning, which the teachers have discovered. They've picked up these skills very, very quickly overnight. They become adept at giving these kind of setting, Zoom classes and others, Microsoft Teams and so many others. I feel that we need to embrace technology. We cannot live without technology. And this is the way education is going world over. And I think in India also, we found that where there have been pockets of online teaching, that by and large, they've gone pretty well. I mean, there are slippages. It's not a panacea for everything. It's not something that works in every single context. I mean, children do need the physical presence of the teacher. They need the socialization. They need to learn a lot of life skills that come from being with each other. But nevertheless, given that we are in a pandemic, I think we have come out of it for the children very well. Like those children who are preparing for the boards and they're taking online classes, we've done their examinations and found that they've picked up quite a bit. So we have evidence of their learning in the situation where online.
Ms. Gandhi, also right now it's a compulsion. But going forward, I think children and teachers will return back to campuses. The hybrid learning that we talk of may happen, but you can't take away the experience of a school, the experience of a school bus, the experience of a canteen, the experience of a student talking to a teacher.
Right. Yes, that's the point.
It's not the same, but we'll have me having to make do. Let me bring in Atul Gupta at this point. Atul, what is your assessment of how the demand will pan out post Diwali? Do you see it sustaining in certain categories? Or do you think we're in for a long haul in terms of demand?
So whatever we have noticed since the time the pandemic has happened, so there is very, very few industries which have actually see exponential growth. So when we talk about the industries like FMCG, health and insurance, these are the only very few industries, which have seen growth. Apart from that, most of the industries have almost negative growth as of now. Though there has to be something which is really, really spectacular happening post Diwali to get the markets back into action. But right now, whatever rush we see, it's just because of the festive season kicking in. I don't see an actual real character behind the economy or between the people's sentiments to coming back.
Okay, I think thank you for being so honest and real about it, Atul. And Atul, we'd love to know what have you done to your business in the last 7-8 months to be able to pivot or orbit change and kind of make it more relevant to the environment?
Right. So I represent a company called CoFind. We are into finding the right space. So we do a lot of aggregation for all the co-working spaces and the co-living spaces pan-India. We are currently operational in 16 cities. When the pandemic happened, we were only operational in Delhi, NCR, Delhi, Noida, and Gurgaon. So we have actually utilized this time to expand into the various cities. So this has actually given us the time to get our product right, to get the user experience right about the platform and expand into various cities. So we have taken this adversity as an opportunity to expand, and we have really grown. So the numbers are still to talk, but yes, we have grown across the various cities.
Thank you. I think Indian entrepreneurs have used this time to go within and find solutions and improve their businesses. Mr. Roy, from what you see in the environment in terms of being a business executive, where do you see the economy headed? What are your comments?
Yeah. Good evening to everybody. Good evening, Vineet. Good evening, Dr. Anurag. First of all, I would like to say that I actually belong to an Indian multinational, which is not fully automated, but an engineering manufacturing industry. Now, one of the things that we have learned during the pandemic is really to execute the learnings of the Industrial Revolution 4.0. That is automating your industry to its full potential. I'll give you an example. Just as per my calculations, if you, we manufacture engineering products for the water supply sector, irrigation sector, industrial water supply sector, and sewerage sector. From the demand side, there has been no lacking because of the central government's Jal Jeevan Mission projects. The demand side, as far as our industry is concerned, there has been no slippage on the demand side.
In fact, just to support you, in a lot of industries, the demand is there, but the supply chains have been disrupted.
Yeah, in our case also, it had been disrupted. During the lockdown.
Demand. So I'm just supporting what you say.
Yeah, during the lockdown and just after the lockdown for the first 1.5 months, the supply chain was disrupted because of the logistics.
I'm talking even now. I'm saying even now. Of course, we know about
even now. Like I'll tell you something like I'll tell you, earlier there used to be physical inspections, all right. Now we have migrated to an era where we could do video inspections, all right. People from 3 locations are inspecting a product within a plant. So these things are new that are happening.
You're right. Automation will create new opportunities and hopefully efficiency.
Automation and adopting of technology at every front. But you know, automation also creates lot of problems. I'll tell you something. Allow me 2-3 minutes of time. You see, we work with 6,000 people. My company, we work with 6,000 people. And the first 2.5 months of lockdown, we were completely shut down. Our plants were shut down, all right? So the actual crucible of money making, which is the manufacturing plant, there was no making of money except for dispatching of the stocks, all right? So what happened was that, yes, there were pay cuts instituted, the management cadre taking the highest hit, and slowly we opened up. Then there was a
Where are we? Where are we? Where are you, Mr.
We are in Calcutta.
I think that this disruption happened in every industry. I'd like you to make your point very quickly before I bring in Bharat Goyal again. We know the context, we know the background. Let's look at what's happening right now.
Right now, of course, you see, we have come back to 95% of our production. And as I said earlier, that there has been no disruption from the demand side. And we have also made a lot of critical changes by introducing automation. And although we took a hit financially in the first 3 months, the first quarter 2 has been good. Overall, of course, we are in the red. But we see there is progress for us in the next 3-4 months to come. In our industry, we are not going to get affected
That's good to know, Mr. Roy, because you contribute to the GDP. But because you're in Bharat, you're in a tier 3, tier 4 city. Before parents stop paying fees, or a percentage of parents who are not very forthcoming when it comes to paying fees, and that has impacted the revenues of schools like yours?
Definitely.
Welcome back. You're watching NewsX. My name is Vineet Malhotra. Invigorating conversation with some of the best business minds, entrepreneurs in the country. Bharat, before we took a break, Anurag had asked you a very pertinent question pertaining to schools and fee collection. Go ahead, answer that for him and our viewers.
For sure, the fee collections, as we've discussed, parents all across the country, I think, are same. And in tier 3 and 4 cities, what's more hampering the collections is the populistic politics that happens here. So every now and then, every school management explain to them that what we are doing, how we are doing, and why is it important to pay fee. So as the stream will start, then we'll have one statement from some of the ministers happening, and the entire stream will again dry up. And this is what probably I would say has been the case with every school, not just in our town. We are in discussions with many schools across the country, and it is happening everywhere. If I give you a very small figure, that almost 90% of the schools in our country are charging less than 1,000 rupees a month. That's the budget schools, right? And the collections in these schools are as low as 5 to 10%. And on a bare minimum, every school has to spend, which is around 50 to 60% on staff salaries alone. Almost every government all state governments across the country have stopped transportation payments. Only tuition fees is allowed to be charged. And what that is doing is, anyways, the fee collections for schools have been cut down by almost 40%. It's only 60% that they could collect. Out of that, only 10% is what we are able to receive. And as Ms. Gandhi has already mentioned, that the capital availability is also very, very low for us. All the schemes that were disclosed or given by the government, they don't apply to our institutions. And this is a really very extensive phase. I think every state associations of schools is fighting a lot of cases in various high courts and Supreme Courts on a daily basis. Yes, the fee collections are extremely low.
So, Bharat, what is the solution? And when do you see the situation changing? Of course, it depends on when the vaccine comes. It depends on when COVID goes away. But God forbid, if this continues for a long while, what is the kind of solutions you have to offer to policymakers who are watching this show?
We are engaging with our policymakers on multiple levels to engage and explain it to them that doing away with private institutions will not work. See, there's another figure which I can quote, that world, if we take out India from it, has only 6% of population goes to private schools. And as you add India, it goes up to 13%. India is one such country where 47% of our enrolled students, go to private institutions. So doing away with the private education, and especially private schools, is not an option for us.
And the new education policy anyway envisages in terms of a public-private partnership that Ms. Gandhi.
Yes.
So private schools have a role to play. I mean,
yeah.
I went to a private convent school. I'm sure some of you would have done that too, and that is what has helped enhance our careers and our lives. So, clearly private schools have a role to play.
Yes. So what we really need to understand is that government needs to take a proactive role in terms of explaining it to people, the parents of our country, that schools are very important. They should not be diminished in public. Today, every newspaper comes out and says that all institutions are thieves. There are
any generalization of painting everyone. It's like saying all media organizations are irresponsible. That's not true. Some are. I mean, there is no shouting on this channel. We're having a conversation. Of course, me and Vineet are moderating it, so we may have our point of view. But I'm with you that schools have a role to play. Private schools have a very big role to play. And just because we are passing through a tough time, we cannot pass judgments which kind of chip away at the institution's credibility. Let me go to Atul. Atul, the future of work has changed. The future of workplaces has changed. And we at BW Businessworld has launched Flexi Spaces to be able to recognize that. It's a conference and awards on the future of workspaces. Now, most of the co-working spaces, at least in the last 7-8 months, saw shrinking of revenues. In the last few weeks, revenues have started to come back. But we all have discovered the flexibility to work from anywhere, not just the home, and a lot of us from the home. So how do you think the co-working spaces are reinventing themselves? What are the changes they're bringing in to be able to be relevant to this new era of working?
Right. So, the whole concept of co-working spaces is built around two concepts. One is freedom and the other is flexibility. The freedom from not owning a space, freedom of not putting the capex into it, and the flexibility of choosing your work hours, flexibility of choosing office for a day, for a week, for a month. That is what is not available in a conventional lease. So what we have learned as an industry in this pandemic is before the pandemic, there was a lot of learning happening. What we have realized that we don't need that much of learning. Life can also go with a little bit of unlearning happening. So there is a lot of unlearning which has happened.
So the community you talked of in a co-working space, I mean, if I met a co-working owner, and I can say I met India's top 40 co-working owners, they talk of community, and there was very little differentiation because, so really, today online creates that community. Today online creates that.
Exactly, and the entire co-working community was always the entire co-working ecosystem was built around a community. And when there are no people, what will we talk about community? So we are actively in talks with the various co-working players. So we have offered different schemes, packages to people so that at least they're interested in coming back to the spaces. Now the spaces are completely sanitized, safe. That is the need of the hour, to have a space which is completely spick and span. There is no possibility of infections. Whatever touch points were there in terms of the spaces, they have been removed. We are going for facial recognitions. We are embedding a lot of technology.
So security in office spaces and co-working spaces is number one. But what else in terms of business model? What is the tweak they made to the business model?
Okay, so the biggest tweak in terms of the business model is since the buzzword during the pandemic was work from home. So we have created a new buzzword, which is called work near home. So we are giving the flexibility to the organizations to buy the daily passes on our platform where they can offer their employees not to travel too much. They can just pick up a workspace which is very close to their house and they can just go and work there.
Beautiful.
So yeah, so this is what we are promoting as of now.
Okay, Ms. Gandhi, and I want to ask this to Mr. Roy, Ms. Gandhi, and possibly to Vineet also. When do you see the Indian economy coming back and coming back in full bloom? I mean, we know the last 45 days were good, but beyond November, do you see it coming back in 6 months, 12 months, or 18 months? And I would like to know from all of you, what are your top lockdown lessons? Something that will hold you in good stead throughout your life that you discovered in COVID times. Let me start with Mr. Roy this time. Mr. Roy, when do you see the economy coming back in full bloom?
Yeah,
you told us that you are at 95% of manufacturing capacity.
Yeah.
And you see the next 4 months being very good. But tell us, when do you think the economy will be back fully?
Actually, I think I said 4 months, but actually I think in the next 4 years, we are going to be very good. Although we are at 95% and we would be 100% by another next 2 to 3 months, but we don't contribute to 95% of the GDP, unfortunately. The point is, if you look at...
Again, you're right. You're making a very subtle point. You're alluding to it that the services sector is hit, which contributes 2/3 to the economy. While the government has proactively taken a lot of steps to unlock the agriculture economy, the farm to fork economy, but that impact may be in the near, medium term and long term. So clearly you're right in the saying that just manufacturing won't get us out of it.
Yeah, I personally think, this is my personal view, that the economy should be strongly moving forward sometime in 2022, middle of 2022, when you must have read the article in which the interview of Dr. Randeep Guleria of AIIMS, he said that the vaccine should be popularly available by 2022. And I think it has to do with a lot of unleashing of the fear from people's minds going away, and
That's not going away. If the vaccine is not available, that's not
over-inventing
going
that
away.
we are trying to do during the pandemic will also go away. You see, one is we have made a lot of innovations during the pandemic, but we have also done over-innovations, over-inventing. That kind of psychosis has also disturbed us quite a lot.
What's your top lockdown lesson, Mr. Roy? What is one thing?
Of the greatest lockdown lessons for me is, brutally speaking, as a manufacturing industry, we have to do with a lesser number of people, unfortunately, although it creates unemployment. But I think the government and the industry will have to work together to find out newer means of employing people, reskilling people, because engineering manufacturing units cannot work with
automation and
aggressive automation is
doing away with jobs, so we have to create new skills in our existing
aggressive automation is the order of the day. Productivity, quality, and
Bharat Goel, when do you see the economy coming back in full bloom? When all the parents would be paying you 100% fees without you chasing them?
My view is that we'll take at least 2 years from here on. The schools would have to reinvent themselves. It is about time, because see, education industry was the most lazy industry in adopting technology, and we've been pushed into that. And so I think this is about time when homeschooling as a concept should be adopted in our country, where today RT Act doesn't allow that. And probably this digital space will help us to have flexible schools. And it is about time that we should think about them, because in metropolitan cities and even in our smaller cities, children are spending more than 2 hours in transportation. And probably this is a lot wastage of their time, which can be used for physical activities, any other learning that they can develop.
To higher education and students planning for higher education in the last 6 months or so, is that critically affected because of the pandemic? Because nobody seems to be talking about it.
Definitely. See, I'll tell you, we focus a lot on our class 12 students. And I'll tell you, as the lockdown was announced, the students were absolutely careless. They were thinking that the exams will not happen again. Then some seriousness happened when the JEE and medical exams were put forward for June. But once they were postponed further for September, then more than 90% students did not prepare at all. For them, they were almost sure that it will not happen even in September. This year will definitely be a zero year for them. So there is a very big percentage when we say, see, I'll not say that nobody prepared for it. There are students who did well, and we can see in medical entrance exams, we got 720 out of 720, and that to 2 students. So there were good scores. But otherwise, education, schools, even higher education institutes, the one thing that they give most is a timetable. They engage the student well. This is which was missing. And in fact, the digital divide, which Ms. Gandhi was speaking about, is very, very big. And this is my number one takedown from lockdown, that you have to equip your learner to adapt to any changing environment. Earlier, when SARS was entering our country, we were careless about it. But probably tomorrow, if there's any other virus that comes, all of us will have our ears right up every now and then. So technology and the flexible schools, as I'm saying, are here to stay. They have to become a norm. It's just that how soon our policies can adapt to it.
And Bharat, what are your top lockdown lessons?
I can talk about personally, I would say fitness is one top lockdown lesson, which everybody should definitely have. But other than that, businesses who did not change themselves are the deepest people who are in trouble. Every sector you'll see some people thriving, but the others are on the verge of finishing themselves just because they were still not changing themselves. And probably adaptation is something which is now even more important than earlier.
Ms. Gandhi, when do you see the economy coming back in full bloom, and what are your top lockdown lessons?
Anuragji, I believe that the future is yet to behold. Reality is looking pretty bleak from my vantage point. A lot of the service sector people have lost their jobs, businesses have lost workers, are not able to pay their fee, budget private schools are deeply affected. I don't see this, huge situation changing in any short term. I see that schools in particular, this mention by Bharatji about a zero year, are actually facing that possibility that if the schools remain closed for the next 4 months, the chances are we are going to be in far, far deeper trouble. Because the teachers' salaries are already not paid for so many months, another 4 months. Many children are just saying, okay, no choice but to go to government school. They'd rather be in the private school. They want their children to learn. They want to be able to pay, but they're not having the resources to pay, and that's a reality. So that's why we are seeing like the survey by NISA, National Independent Schools Association, shows that 80,000 school survey shows that less than 10% of the fees has been collected. And yes, there are some schools like the one I run also, we have 60-70% collection, and Bharatji so beautifully explained the dilemma we are in. But what we need to do, and that's what you keep asking for, is a solution to the problem. And I think we need to take a very decisive action in favor of education. We need to prioritize education. The government is a bystander to what's going on. To some extent, they created the confusion early on, and now the parents are thinking it's an entitlement not to pay. Those who can pay, we've had applications from government sector employees who can easily pay, but they want a discount or not pay at all. So this entitlement and government sector mentality in schools is killing our schools. I think government has to take a decisive action. It's part of the mess. It's part of the mess that was created. And we need to not ignore what's going on at a minimum. We need to have an economic package for the education sector, for the private education sector. And I think if we don't do that, I see a very bleak future, at least for education and for people in the lower segment of society.
Okay. And what are your top lockdown lessons, Ms. Gandhi, as an entrepreneur that will help you run your business and contribute to the society better?
I agree with some of the presenters already that adaptation and change. I think we need to embrace change. We need to not think of it as a temporary thing. I think we've been getting a lesson for so many months now. I think teachers in education are also getting the hang of it. Things they are changing to a new normal, as we keep calling it. And I think the change is a watchword. And for me, for us as an organization to grow, we would need to continue to adapt to new changes, and of course, blended learning, blended teaching, and as Bharatji said, flexible schools or hybrid schools. We need to change education as we know it. We need to rewrite education as we know it. It's pretty uninteresting for the children. It's boring. Even in a physical setting, it's not a panacea to all the problems and all the ills of an education we have. So change is what I would say.
Fantastic. And change is always painful when you start, but eventually it pays dividends that make up for that pain. And they say there's no gain without any pain. Atul Gupta, when do you see the economy coming back? I remember a time last year when everybody was opening new centers in terms of co-working spaces. You talk to any co-working player, they're looking at adding seats, adding new locations. But
so in 2019, the way we looked things in 2019, 2020 was supposed to be.
We lost your voice, Atul.
Talk about the economy reviving. When the economy is contracting, a physical stimulus by the government is required. Whenever a good physical stimulus comes, it sets up a cycle of higher growth and better tax collection. The government has done their bit. Now it's all up to us for the business entrepreneurs to do their bit to spread the positivity around. And there are various ways, which we can get the economy back. So is the government investing into a sustainable infrastructure? Are we in India going towards a sustainable infrastructure? Are we going and giving more leverages to companies which are doing into electronic charging? Are we doing more towards electronic vehicles which are coming to? So there are, for me, I don't see the economy growing for the next 1.5 to 2 years. It will take at least a couple of years from here.
And what's our top lockdown lesson, Atul, as an entrepreneur? The game that you learned, that you knew before, but you never used them?
Exactly. So the top lockdown lesson is technology. If you invest in the right technology, then that is the way forward. And going forward, all businesses need to be really, really flexible, and really a lot of freedom needs to happen with your customer base. So that is the top lesson.
Okay, we've been doing this for 5.5 months, almost 6 months. You heard entrepreneurs, and when you listen to them, it gives you hope, it gives you optimism, it gives you the feeling that India has bright minds that will make sure that we stay on course to be a larger economy than what we are now. But we need, when you think about coming to work, whether within your home, going, what are the thoughts that go on in your mind? What are the things that disturb you, and what are the things that give you hope?
It's a very good question, Anurag. In fact, that is something that I think all of us think about, but we never get around to solidifying those thoughts. I'm one of the few lucky ones who still happen to be doing what I was doing before the pandemic. So I'm glad about that. So these are the things that perhaps give me energy and galvanize me. At the same time, I also worry about the future, in the sense that will this last for longer than we are comfortable with? Is this going to impact my family, my children? Is it going to impact my career? Is it going to impact my health? These are the things that I worry about, and I'm sure these are.
I think all of us do. I think
these are very realistic worries and anxieties.
Exactly. You try to ward them off. You try to think about the positivity that spurs up every now and then.
Watch the IPL match final yesterday gives you happiness, takes away from the reality of what's happening around us.
IPL didn't give me any happiness because my team lost. They lost the final. But nevertheless, I think these are unprecedented times. I try to read up about what happened during the Spanish flu and how the world got over it at that point in time. And I try to weigh in how are we different from what the world was in that era. It's almost been a century since that happened. They did not have a digital platform. They did not have medicine at the level we do. They did not have the kind of treatment or healthcare that we do today. But still, the situation is very grim. So you try and analyze, where are we going wrong, and how can I contribute in making sure that you affect and impact lives that can perhaps sort of gain or seek some help, and not worry and do things which perhaps will make them happy, and avoid getting infected, avoid putting yourself in precarious situations. That's all I think one can do. You take care of yourself first, Anurag, and then you take care of others. I think that's the must.
One of the things that I wanted to tell Anurag and Vineet and all the other panelists is, my city of Calcutta, I read 2 days back in the Hindu that during the lockdown and post-lockdown has been blooming with a lot of poetry. So that gives me hope that, people are returning to the arts during the lockdown. And it's good, it's good to see that people are taking to the creative side of things. And because I talked so much about aggressive automation shouldn't make others feel that I'm a brutal automaton. I'm not that. I'm also an artist at heart, but that's what, manufacturing industry really can't survive with so many people.
All right.
So much.
All right. Anurag, we've run out of time. I guess that should do it. And if you have any concluding thoughts, Anurag, please.
I just want to say, Vineet, that I think the next 45 days are more crucial than ever. And I'd also say that human beings are resilient. We all are resilient. If somebody said to us 8 months back that we'll have to go through the next 8 months in the way we've gone through it, we possibly would have said, no, we won't be able to do that. But we know that whatever happens, tomorrow will be better, and we shall prevail. So this shall too pass. That's what I want to say. I know it sounds tough when the number of cases are going up every day in cities like Delhi, but I think this shall too pass.
Absolutely. And on that optimistic, flourishing note, thank you everyone for being a part of this wonderful show. And everybody should take care and make the best of the extra time everybody has at hand. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks a bunch.
Thank you.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.